About Conexxus. So Conexxus is a nonprofit technology organization. We are independent from NACS, the National Association of Convenience Stores, but we do work very closely with NACS on many endeavors, including the Trueage project. We are a volunteer organization. Our members do the heavy lifting. We just provide that neutral forum where retailers and vendors can network and come together to create standards and solutions that are beneficial to our industry. We also educate through a variety of topics and guidance through white papers and events that we offer through Conexxus365. We also advocate on a technical level with other organizations to help steer the conversations around standards and policies. We're at the table when others are setting these policies or standards to make sure that what's done doesn't negatively impact your ability to do business. Since you're here, you are aware of Conexxus365 and that the weekly events we do here replace our successful monthly webinar series. Up next week, we have IoT for Everyone. This is one of a series of IoT webinars that we'll be doing for 2021, all sponsored by Intel. So look for some great content on ways to use IoT today in your businesses, regardless of your store count.
We are one of the largest single channels, brick and mortar channels, for conveying age-gated products. So if you look at this, half of our inside sales have some sort of age-gated product in it. 27% of our unit sales are age-gated. 37% of our transaction volumes have some level of age-verified product in it. The issue we have on age is that age is also very profitable for us. If you take a look at tobacco and then you add in beer, where you can sell beer, you know, between those two categories, you're looking at 35% plus about 12 or 15%. You're looking at half of your sales and a lot of your profits, because the halo effect of tobacco is that it brings in people on a daily basis who then buy more things and then walk out the door. So we see this as something that's really important for the industry to maintain. And so NACS executive committee in a year ago, January, came to me and said, is there a way that we can go ahead and create a digital age verification program that improves upon what we've been doing for the last 20 years through the We Card program and other training that we've offered? And we came up with what is now being called Trueage. It was actually our project name back at the start of it, and we have now trademarked it, and Trueage is the product name going forward. And Trueage is a comprehensive digital age verification solution that opens up a lot of doors of commerce, but it also makes sure that some of the doors of commerce don't get closed in our face.
So thanks, everyone. That was really great. And I've got a few questions from the audience, and we'll take those first. And then I've got quite a few questions myself. That was a lot of information. So I've got some interesting ones here, and I'm going to probably shoot those over to Brad. Can you comment on some of the battery life and changing batteries to some of these IoT devices?
Yeah, so that question came from David, and David doesn't feel well today, so I think David. No, I'm kidding. So David, hope you feel better, number one. And number two, it's one of the reasons that I recommend using industrial gear versus non, is the industrial IoT sensors tend to be engineered with significantly longer battery life. And one of the suppliers that I ended up spending a significant amount of time with, we could actually fine tune their sensors, and battery life is a complete function of how often your sensor is reporting information. But still having it report more than frequently enough every minute, for example, which is sort of ridiculous in terms of data collection. We could see anywhere between 2 to 3 years of life in the sensors. And I don't think that's onerous at all, per your comment. It certainly would be expensive if you're going out there and replacing batteries. And then another component of industrial sensors.
Jack, I'm going to kind of pick on you. A lot of things that you were talking about are super important for those foundational things, you know, the standards. Can you talk a little bit more about the challenges of adopting standards that can benefit the listeners, and maybe how can they get involved?
Yeah, so that's a really good question. I mean, there's definitely benefits for retailers, for going down the path of standards. I think just to kind of highlight a few, your standards can bring interoperability, right? It's the idea of while there's some great vendors out there, there's always an interest in having alternatives or creating some type of level of vendor neutrality, right? Efficiency. You start going down the path of when you have standards and you're adopting standards, they can really improve the long-term quality of your solutions when built around standards, right? They produce expected results instead of things that have maybe been engineered or architected on the fly, which is not completely something you can avoid, but it certainly lends itself to some efficiencies. And people like to think about risk, right? It can reduce risk because standards, because of that consistency, can reduce risk around implementations, problems that are unforeseen, deployments, there's things like that all focus on risk, not just some of the security risks that people think about, but just risk in general around implementations and timelines and things like that can be improved with standards and really consistency. I think as you start to build your solutions around standards, you have this consistent model. People, I'd like to it's a shout out to Conexxus, right? Like, how do you get involved if you're not taking advantage of some of the material that comes out of Conexxus? I would highly encourage going onto the website for retailers or signing up and looking at our website if you're not already a member and trying to look at some of the APIs that are being driven, some of the standards that are already available and seeing what things may solve the problems that people have.
And one final question, if you're not a data scientist or an expert in data, how would you manage all this? And maybe I'll pick on Charity since you're an expert and a business owner.
From a small business perspective, we often are not in control of our technology, but we can be in control of the data that feeds that technology and looking at the results from that. So if you're not an expert, I think I'm going to lean back on Jack's question and ask yourself, you need to really ask yourself, what's the problem I'm trying to solve? Sometimes we get hit with a ton of technology and then we don't know what to do with that. So I would first look at the potential, and then I would look at all the various ways that particular solution is being used to decide if you have similar problems. And then I would take the step back to say, what's my real problem? Because the data collected by those things, that's the data you need. How big is my problem drives your data. So if you cannot measure how big your problem is, there's your problem number one. You have no idea how big. I would also tell you that, leaning back on Jack, Conexxus members are the members you want to look at when it comes to picking technologies. Because as a small business owner, we don't necessarily often get to change our technology.
You can dispute it as a merchant. Yes, you can get extra data from the issuer, but then also there's oftentimes lots of data surrounding the transactions that is included through your processor.
Josh, go ahead, Dan.
Yeah, the thing that I would add to that is just in talking to some retailers, that the other thing that has gone up in addition to chargebacks is the cost of disputing those chargebacks. So it takes a lot of time and effort to pull all that information together in order to do that dispute. So, the costs are going up one way or the other.
Ransomware is in the forefront of global politics, national news, commerce, industry, security, and everything. And Rob is that IT generalist with a passion for all things security. He and his family live in Nashville, Tennessee. And for the last several years, he has led security programs for major retail petroleum service providers, and also has been the security and engineering lead for a large unbranded retail chain. When he's not goofing off with security projects, he's usually enjoying camping in the great outdoors. Although I'm sure you got to do a lot of that with the pandemic, Rob, but now with all this ransomware stuff, I'm sure you're quite busy. So without further ado, Rob, talk to us about ransomware attack.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that introduction. Today we're going to be talking about, as he mentioned and as Emily introduced, anatomy of a convenience marketer ransomware attack. That is a mouthful, and I don't pretend otherwise. And I think the real takeaway from this is we, as a service provider that is oftentimes working with customers who have been hit by ransomware to do remediation, to help them recover, we kind of wanted to pull the curtains back a little bit. What happens? What does it look like on our side of things to respond to this? And what are some of the learnings that we have from this? And we had a gracious partner, customer who went through an unfortunate attack who said, please use what you learned from us to tell the story, because we think other people need to know how to defend themselves.
All those paper coupons and send them off, and God knows what happens to them, and then they just get a statement back.
That same process that you're using today with paper is what would happen. So the only difference here is that you would have all the data that's coming from the Coupon Bureau. So I mentioned earlier that we've got these real-time API connections, and one of those APIs is a redemption API. So you would be able to utilize that to create the invoices. However, I will say one of my favorite conversations I think I've probably ever had with Gray Taylor, he was like, okay, Brandy, tell me again how this works. Like, what happens with clearing? And I start telling him, well, the merchant has to like bundle up all the paper coupons, and they have to send them to Del Rio, Texas, and then they get walked across the board. And he's like, no. So I do think that one of my things that I love about Conexxus is implementing new standards that make it easier for you as merchants. So if you have a clearinghouse process that you're using today, you can continue that. However, Conexxus is working on enabling some new processes for you guys that are more streamlined, digital. Obviously, CoopDog is a piece of that, which we're really excited about. But if there's something that maybe you have a question about with your current provider and how it could work, please don't hesitate to reach out to us, and I'll be happy to work with you or your current provider if they're not already connected in the ecosystem.
Josh, this one's for you. So Trueage, we've heard a lot about Trueage from NACS, and you're consulting on that project. How does this tie into this process, or how does Trueage tie into this process?
I think it's a great question. The nice thing about Trueage is the token could be embedded into the coupon, right? So now it's just an added level of protection for both the retailer and for the CPG, that we're making sure that the right people are able to consume the products. I definitely know that for the Trueage team, getting integrated into the coupons and for the coupon providers and many of our retailers as well is mission critical. So it's great to see multiple Conexxus kind of work streams merging together for the good of the retailer and for the consumer.
Barcode on a product, and that worked at point of sale. That helped enable some more automated means of capturing inventory with that point of sale data. And if we move forward to where we are today, just like you saw on the last slide, we're seeing different data carriers on a product. Some are using RFID for inventory, and that won't go away. Digital Link doesn't replace RFID. It enhances the ability to engage the consumer, which is something RFID doesn't very easily do today. But you may see other data carriers for marketing, for supply chain, and then of course the 1D always has to be there in order to go beep at checkout. We believe in the near-term future that we are going to have two data carriers. You're going to continue to see the UPC barcode on products because you need that for point of sale and for other things that are already in place. But if you start to think about your use cases that you are enabling with multiple barcodes, choose a 2D data carrier of choice to implement the GS1 Digital Link syntax, we believe you can get down to two data carriers for now. And eventually, the potential is for product packaging to only need to carry a single line of sight data carrier per product that will work with different scanning operations, handheld scanners, mobile terminals, go beep at checkout. And brands and retailers will even be able to contextualize and customize experiences when you scan within their specific apps. So what we're doing is working to help educate our members, guide them to the future in a practical manner, because as we mentioned earlier, this really gives companies the ability to move forward at their own pace. So at a minimum for Sunrise 2027, we want retailers to be able to scan a 2D, extract the G10, do the price lookup, and go beep at checkout, just what the 1D barcode does. But then they can take that further either before 2027 or after to be able to pick out additional data that a brand may encode in a 2D carrier, like batch lot, maybe serialization of freshness date. Maybe you get to do an auto discount at point of sale because now you have more information in the barcode itself when you scan it. So you can offer a discount for a nearly expiring product. You can stop sale of a recall product that you haven't had time to pull off the shelf. There's some value there to also reduce manual labor in addressing those things within a store.
How do you make sure that you've got consistency of data going into the central database? Are you guys maintaining a data dictionary? Is there an overarching, Webster's that is saying this is what a fuel cell means across the entire enterprise? How do you guys manage that?
Yeah, I don't. It's a great question. I don't think you can do anything in transformation or agility without data structure, and so it is part of our journey here to transform. And I would say that we're still a little early in that journey. We've built out a significant data and analytics team and the IT capabilities to match that, and we're going down the path now of master data management. Mm-hmm. And making sure that we've got that structure you talk about. So I think each time you and I talk, we're always talking about the data dictionary, and I know Conexxus has done some great work around creating some of those definitions. Now it's taking and implementing those across the board, and then having master data management and governance around that to make sure that we're consistent.
As one of the folks that has been very much instrumental in making Conexxus and all the way back into PCAS the success that it is. If you're not familiar with Ed, Ed has retired recently with a very long career in retail. And what I mean by that is not the style, color, size stuff, but food retail and convenience.
I would categorize what's keeping them up at night into 4 categories. One being people, the second being things that happen. The third, no surprise, I don't think to anybody, is going to be security. All types of security. And then the fourth thing that's keeping them up is, what am I going to do next? What's the next to drive our business and drive IT within our business forward? Mm-hmm.
That's an interesting thing. That I'm pleased to hear that people is number one.
Yeah.
You brought up, the Ireland retailers. I wrote this report with Scott Annan from London and a few other folks where we looked at basically what U.S. retailers can learn from their Northern Ireland counterparts. And some of the data that his group has, there's retailers and they're doing 50 to 70% of inside sales on fresh food for today and less than 10% on tobacco. I mean, these are first and foremost places just to go eat. You look at retailers like Morn Centra. I mean, pull that up on Google Maps. I wish I had that in my neighborhood. I'd be there all the time. Right. It's an incredible retailer with wonderful food. And that's the thing. I think they're the real global outlier in food service, kind of like, Norway's a global outlier in EVs and, China for practically everything retail tech. It's just, I think the more that US retailers are able to move in that direction of not just fresh food service, but food service with a strong brand identity wrapped around it, I think the better place they're going to be in. You look at a company like Wawa, like Casey's, Sheetz. If that fuel canopy disappeared, there's still a business model there through food. Right. I'm not saying it's going to, but I'm saying the point is those are really strong stores. The folks that are scratching at the surface level with, prepackaged, heat up, sausage, egg, and cheese croissants that have no brand identity and things like that. That's a dime a dozen, and you can get that anywhere. What is uniquely yours, and what can people not get anywhere else? You mentioned Texas Born. When they were quick, last time I was down there, those breakfast tacos were to die for. Those are seriously, I've thought about those a lot. Those are some of the best I've had. That makes an impression on a person. And I knew, how I knew it was good? Because after I bought the breakfast tacos, I was at the register and the cashier was trying to convince me to come back for lunch because he was telling me how good the food is during lunch.
You think this is good? You got to try the lunch. Yes.
That's when someone's hit a home run,